What's up guys, I'm Lou for Golf Avenue and today we're testing out Titleist Drivers. Alright guys, so if you've seen our videos before, you know how these comparison clips go. We test each driver about 10 times each just to get a proper amount of data, and then we go back and compare the data just to know which one ended up on top and see how much of a difference there is between the older models compared to the newer ones. So without further ado, let's go test out our drivers. We'll go find out about each one of the models one by one as I test them. But if I give you a little hint right now, we're covering about 25 years of Titleist driver history. So the difference between the oldest and the newest model will be extremely interesting to look at. So let's kick things off with our oldest model in the bunch, the Titleist 975D, released in 2001. Alright guys, so quick first impressions on the 975D before we look at the data even. I'm gonna say that it's decently long, honestly definitely not as long as my own Gamer or something more recent, so I'm interested to see the more recent drivers compared to this one and see how big the gap will be. But I will say it was really harder to generate any speed with that one or any power at impact. Even if I was able to transfer a decent amount of speed with my swing, the club didn't transfer it that much towards the golf ball. One thing I do have to point out is the club head size of the 975D. Look at this, it's not very big compared to modern club heads. So it was a little hard for me to get comfortable behind the club head at first. And one thing that I did notice that if you ever were to come across the ball and really cut across it, the ball would fly straight to the right. There's no protection when it comes to draw bias or tendencies to slice. This one, if you have a tendency to slice or if you have any tendency to maybe even hook the ball, it'll get exposed right away. And that's one point that we'll give to the 975D is that it's really good when it comes to ball feel. If you're able to make contact with the center of the club face feels great at impact. But if you're missing the club face or the center of it, you'll know right away and your performance will be greatly impacted compared to maybe more modern drivers that are way more forgiving than this one. So that's the next thing we want to look at when we're testing the more recent model is how much forgiving are they? Do I feel way more comfortable with the club head behind the golf ball? And the other thing is how further or will they go further than the 975D? But that's our starting point. Let's go test our other drivers and see what the results will give us. So next up, we're looking at the Titleist 917D2 released in 2016. This one has the Sure Fit channel here right at the back. This little channel allows you to customize the weight inside the club head however you want. There's two different weights that you get with this driver. Normally, if you buy it brand new, it comes with the neutral weight and the draw or fade weight. So we're gonna look at this one right here inside the club head and see which option you have. When it comes to the neutral weight, you could just leave it right in the middle. The weight wouldn't change it much. It wouldn't really be worth it for you to change the weight of this one. But if you do want to customize it and adjust it to your preferred weight, there's always a chance of modifying the weight inside the club head to either the fade or draw or the neutral and the option you want. It all depends on how you set it up, but of course you've got the draw option here. If you put it towards this direction as the arrow shows, and on the other side you also have the fade option if you set it up the other way. But for us, we're gonna put it in a draw setup just because that's what I'm most used to. So let's go and set it up that way. All right, so we just finished testing club number 2. There's a Titleist 917D2. Overall, I have to say that in terms of distance and explosiveness of the club face, it was really close to what I have in my bag right now. I personally play a TaylorMade QI10 LS, but this one was really nice. Not necessarily in terms of the spin rates were still too high for what I would prefer personally, but overall the performance was very interesting. I felt like I could really control the golf ball with this club. It was really easy to make good contact and send the ball where I was intending to send it to without never really having to focus too much on my technique or whatever. It was simply, okay, I want to send it that way, I'll be able to do it without too much trouble. I want to send it a little more left, a little more right. Not too much or not too many issues with the 917. Only small downside is that probably the forgiveness is not all the way where it could be. The D2 models from Titleist were not meant to be the most forgiving, although they are pretty forgiving. They're not the most forgiving models that Titleist has for each one of their lines. But nevertheless, this one was pretty good. Honestly, with a little more time with it and getting more familiar with it, I would very easily see it end up in my bag. It's a very reliable driver that you can trust and it feels comfortable when you're sitting at a dress. That's the one last thing I'll say when you're sitting at a dress, when you're looking at the golf club, just standing over it, the look of the dress is amazing and it looks great and it looks like it'll give you plenty of confidence when you're teeing off. So the 917D2, really appreciate it so far, but we'll take a deep dive into the data once I've done testing all the drivers. Alright guys, so I just finished testing the 909 D2 driver from Titleist. Right off the bat, I have to say that this driver is incredibly forgiving. My last strike with it, I felt like I was completely off the toe, was gonna go all the way down to the right, and it ended up as a high arcing draw that came right back to the left. Honestly, this club is magic. There is a bit of offset near the hosel. Honestly, it's a little hard to see with this camera. I'll try to get it for you, otherwise we'll get another angle in a second on camera. And I will say that if you deal with a slice, or if you have a tendency to have balls that end up on the right side too much to your liking, this club, although it's a little older, will definitely deliver in terms of giving you a nice draw bias time and time again. In terms of performance and distance, it wasn't as necessarily as long as the 917 D2, because I didn't feel as comfortable with it. The extra offset near the hosel did kind of fool with my mind, but overall, this driver delivered very well. I wouldn't be shy about recommending it to someone, even if it's an older model that's almost 15 years old at the point, actually over than 50 years old at this point. It's still very reliable and will deliver in terms of performance time and time again. Our second to last driver in this test is the Titleist TSi2. It was released in 2020, at the end of 2020 to be more precise. So let's see what it's got. I just finished my tests with the TSi2. Overall, I have to say that there's not many differences between that one and the 917 D2 in my opinion when it comes to the performance. Maybe I just couldn't get all out of the TSi2. Maybe I just couldn't find the exact sweet spot that I managed to do with the 917 D2. What I will say with the TSi2 is that there's a very, very strong draw bias. Honestly, all my strikes felt like they were ended up on the left end. I'm righty, so obviously everything's a pull to the inside of the stance. It felt like it was really hard to control that specific draw. If I was to set up a little more to the right, the ball would fly straight, yes, but it would be offline just because I'd set up to the right, expecting a draw that wouldn't happen. In other cases, I did manage to hit more straighter balls, but I felt like I was finding the club every single time. So it's probably just an adjustment thing for me. Maybe just adjusting it differently might have helped. But overall, in terms of performance and distance, it's right up there. It's really nice. I really don't have anything negative to say about it. My only concern with it is that it's a powerful draw bias that I was not expecting. And for me, it's probably a little too much for my liking, and it would probably get in the way of my performance when I'm out on the course. But again, as we've mentioned with the 909, if you have a tendency to slice, or if you have a tendency to lose the ball to the right, this club could again be a very wise option for you. But we have one more club to test, so let's go check it out. Last but not least, we're looking at 2024's release, the TaylorMade GT2. This thing is a piece of beauty. It's incredibly sleek, very nice, simple look, classic of Titleist if you want my opinion. And while it might look beautiful, that's not what we're here for today. We're here to see how it performs on the screen. So let me get to testing, and then I'll be right back with you guys to give you my first impressions. And of course, we'll head to your favorite part of this video where we look at the data we gathered from our tests. So let's go test this one out, and I'll be back with you guys. Alright, so I just wrapped up the testing with our TSi2 driver. I have to say that it was not what I expected at all. Here again, we have the same kind of draw bias that we had with the TSi2. A lot of strikes really pulled up to the left. I'm thinking this is probably an intention of Titleist to help with golfers who tend to have a slice and push things to the right. That is really not my case. I tend to have a natural fade that turns into a hook if it's overcooked. So I was surprised that the ball never really cut for me. It was always blocking to the left. I did, however, manage to hit a few long ones that are pretty straight. And when you do manage to find the center of this club face, it's quite explosive. I think I managed to hit my longest strikes with this specific driver here. It was really, really nice when you did manage to find the center of club face. Although it does have that draw bias that I mentioned, I will say that it's incredibly forgiving. Even strikes that were low on the club face, that were closer to the toe or to the heel, the performance was still very, very good. Obviously, you wouldn't get close to the highest number I was able to reach, but you would still be able to get a decent drive that you wouldn't necessarily hate when you're out on the course. You'd still be able to play a decent second shot. It might be a little out of line, especially if you're closer to the heel or the toe of the club head. But regardless, in terms of distance, you'll still be able to get a nice bit out of it, even if it's on lower end of the club face or the higher end or any of the extremities. So overall, the GT2, maybe not for me, but it's a great driver for people who are looking maybe to upgrade from a really older model. But the question still remains, is it way better than a model from 25 years ago? So the next step is to take a closer look at our data, which I'll do in a second. I'll just change my outfit because we have a heat wave here in Montreal and it's really hot right now. So I'll just go change for you guys, come back and take a closer look at our data. All right guys, so we're back. I did have a wardrobe change. It was really hot in here, so now we're good. We're gonna be able to dive right into the numbers. So if we take an overall look at our performance chart, there's a few things that will jump to you right away. And the first one that you should notice is the performance of the 909 D2 driver. It exceeded any other drivers by almost 10 yards when it came to the carry distance. And the total distance, it exceeded the newest driver of our test, the GT2, by almost 8 yards, which is pretty staggering when it comes to total distance on the course. And the 909 D2's performance is extra shocking to me because I really didn't feel that comfortable behind it. If you remember, I did notice that it had really massive offset near the hosel, and that really played with my mind when I was standing in a dress. But in terms of distance, it was incredible and it went for miles. But my discomfort was validated when I look at the dispersion zone of the 909 D2. It also had the largest dispersion zone. So overall, yes, longer, but maybe not as accurate or as consistent as some of the other clubs that I tried out today. The next thing that might stand out to you is that we have a tie when it comes to club speed, both for the 917 D2 and the 909 D2. They both landed at 97.7 miles per hour when it comes to club speed. Obviously, the 909 was a bit better at transferring that energy into the club head and into the ball. But what I will say is that the 917 D2 did feel like the most comfortable driver to me, while the 909 felt like the least comfortable to me. So it's really impressive that the 909 managed to put this kind of performance out despite not feeling that great to me. And in terms of the 917, where I feel like it was more comfortable to me is when you look at the dispersion area. This dispersion area was very, very consistent. Maybe a little wider than what I would have liked, but I felt like it was very consistent in that I was really able to control the golf ball more than with almost any other of our drivers. One of the other things that might have jumped out to you is the performance of the GT2 driver. It wasn't the longest of all the ones I tried, but what I will say is that it transferred the energy to the golf ball better than any of our other drivers. It was 0.2 miles slower with the club head speed than the 917 or the 909, but in terms of overall ball speed, it was the fastest of all the clubs I tried out today. So kudos to the GT2 for transferring energy into the golf ball. I will say though that I was a bit disappointed with the overall performance in terms of distance. Not what I was expecting from a brand new model. Also considering the fact that I pulled a lot of strikes, so I was expecting to get a little more distance out of this. Almost none of my strikes with the GT2 ended on the right side. So it's a good testament to its draw bias properties and its ability to transfer energy into the golf ball. So if you're able to get that good swing out there and good swing speeds, you'll be rewarded for it. But otherwise, I was a bit disappointed by the overall distance data from the GT2. If you take a look at the right edge of our chart, that's where you'll notice the performance of the 917 D2 in terms of spin rates, and it lands on top of all the drivers we tried out today. It is a bit higher than what I would personally like. I tend to like a low spinning driver. I have a QI10 LS in my bag, but this 917 D2 did feel like the most comfortable driver to me impressively, so I would have liked to see its performance. Had it been able to slightly lower the spin rates, probably would have been better fitted with a 917 D3 in my case, but with lower spin rates, I do believe that the 917 D2 could have caught up to the 909, probably not reach the same levels of distance because that was really impressive from the 909 overall. But the 917 definitely had something nice, and there is no wonder why so many people are still holding on to them nowadays. Last but not least, we need to talk about the oldest club at our test, the 975D. I really thought it was going to match up a little more to the newer drivers we had in this test, but it does trail both the TSi2 and the GT2 when it comes to carry distance. It's even 4 yards behind the TSi2, but its impressive perk, it's its rollout ability. It did have the longest rollout of all the drivers we had in our test, so kudos to the 975D for that. And it managed to produce all this rollout despite having the slowest swing speed and the slowest ball speed of all the clubs in our test. The culprit here is very easy to identify. It's the titanium club head of the 975D. The 909 does have part titanium, part carbon club head, but the 975D has a very typical older titanium club head that is very bulky, very heavy. So on the one hand, you do have a great feel for the ball. I felt like it was the most easy driver of all the ones I tested to control. And if you look at the dispersion zone for that one, it was the smallest of all the ones I tried. But it did come with the caveat that energy does not transfer as well into the golf ball. Carbon club heads are popular for a reason nowadays because they are best suited to transfer the energy into the golf ball at impact. And the club head was a little harder for me at impact. I knew right away if I was not making good contact, I would be losing out on a lot of yardage. So forgiveness as well is a bit of a knock on the 975D. So overall, yes, not the longest, probably not the most forgiving driver, but if you're in a very, very tight budget and you need an option that will be decently suited to your needs, the 975D is still to be considered. So if we're looking to answer the question that we posed at the start of this video when we asked how older models compare to new one, I think we can have a definitive answer. You can easily go back 10 to 15 years in time and find a model that will provide you with decent distance, impressive forgiveness, and all of that at a bargain. That's the best part about shopping for older models, is that they'll still deliver all you need on the golf course, but they'll save you so much more in your pockets. The 909D2 is the perfect testament to this theory, actually ended up as the longest of all our clubs. And in terms of forgiveness, it was decently forgiving despite having a bit of a wider dispersion zone than some of the other models we tried. However, when we look at the performance of the 975D, there does seem to be a threshold when it comes to golf clubs from the past century. The 975D was released in 1998, not 2001 like we said earlier, 1998. Which means that if your golf club is over 25 years old, again, depending on technology, you're most likely going to want to look at options that are more recent, or at least from this century. The big thing here is that the 975D lacks the technology to offer you the forgiveness that you would normally expect from modern clubs, and it doesn't have the carbon club head or any carbon properties inside the club head, which would tend to help launch the ball longer for you. So if you're looking for something more forgiving, something that will help you in terms of distance, especially if you have a lower swing speed, think about models from at least this century and even the last 10-15 years if you're able to afford it. But regardless of budget, if there's one takeaway you need to have today is that yes, older clubs can certainly match the performance of new ones, and they're much more affordable when it comes to your wallet. And before we let you go, I just want to take a moment to thank you guys for watching this video. These tests do take a lot of time to come up with, so we appreciate you guys taking the time and enjoying them. As always, I will remind you that if you liked today's video, please leave a like. And if you want to see more golf comparisons, make sure you subscribe to Golf Avenue's channel. And of course, if you have ideas for future videos, make sure to drop them down in the comments. We'll be sure to read them. And as always, for Golf Avenue, I've been Lou. See you next time.